it happened a week earlier, and that would be the Echo flight incident. So we're talking two incidents, very similar, UFOs overhead, shutting down 10 nuclear missiles each, so a total of 20 within the span of a week. And this happened all in March of 1967.
And when you say shutting them down, destroying them to the point where you could never get them fixed, or
no.
Just what did they do?
No, what happened was, and we've got a way of monitoring the system. It's called Versa, but it just means it tells us what happened, and basically the kind of message we were getting was guidance and control system failure, meaning that the guidance system was disrupted, so that the missile wouldn't know exactly where its target was. So,
what good would it be? You know, when that was out, you really couldn't launch it.
That's right. So that's why the missile shut down. They disrupted the targeting system. Now, so when I say they, I mean these objects, whatever they were, had to penetrate 60 feet of Earth and then penetrate the cabling system, which is triply shielded underground cables, and inject some kind of a signal into the system to actually shut them down. So this is pretty fantastic stuff.
What did your superiors say to you? They said, "Robert, keep quiet, don't say anything." Was this classified?
Yes. We had to report back after we were relieved by another crew. We reported back to our squadron commander, and we were told to go in and talk to our squadron commander. And when we went in, there was a member of AFOSI in the office with him, and my colonel was white as a sheet. Didn't know what the heck was going on. If this had been some kind of an Air Force exercise, he certainly would have told me at that point. But he said he didn't know, had no idea why these missiles went down. These things were very reliable, by the way, and we rarely had a missile no-go like that. And I was there for 3 years. Very reliable systems, and they're independent systems. And but at any rate, there was a member of AFOSI in there, and mainly what he was there for was to get us to sign a non-disclosure statement, meaning we were not able to talk about this at all to anyone. And he told us that in no uncertain terms that we should never talk about it to anybody. So we had to sign it, and we did.
Now, amongst each other, were you able to talk about it?
No.
Not even that?
No, not even that. He told us specifically we were not to talk to anybody, including each other or any of the guards involved. And as a matter of fact, a couple of days later, I got a call from one of the guards begging me to come and talk to him, because this was a very frightening experience for them, as you can imagine.
Oh, I'm sure so. But, I mean, come March 25th, the day after the event, was it like business as usual?
Pretty much business as usual.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, I was there for another 2 years, and we were never briefed on any of the investigation that was going on at the time as to why the missiles went down. And we got regular briefings every time we went out on alert, which was about every 3 days. We'd get a technical briefing on problems in the field with the weapons or the systems, and so we would get briefings every day, and not another word was said about this.
Robert, 14 years ago on this very show, Coast to Coast, you went public with this story.
Yes.
How come? One, why'd you wait so long? Two, why'd you go public?
Well, the reason I went public was because in 1994, I was in a bookstore in Seattle, picked up a book called The Bub Top Secret by Timothy Good.
Right.
Heard of that?
Good guy.
Yeah, and I happened to flip to page 301, and right there said 10 missiles went down in Montana during a UFO event, and it was just a short paragraph. And so I got really excited because I thought, well, maybe the Air Force has released this information. And so I contacted MUFON in Seattle and asked one of the investigators, happened to be Jim Klotz, the co-author of our book.
Of your book, yeah, Faded Giant.
And cautiously told him about my story and asked if he could write to the Air Force under the Freedom of Information Act and get some documents. And so he did. And lo and behold, the Air Force writes back and says, this is still classified, this incident. Of course, we didn't mention anything about UFOs in our letter.
Okay.
And they said...
Just the down silos, I guess, right?
Yeah, just the fact that these 10 missiles went down for unknown reasons. And they wrote back and said, this is still classified, but since it's been so long and since you've requested it under Freedom of Information Act, we're going to declassify, and this is the Echo incident, Echo flight incident.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to declassify it, and we're sending you some documents. So they started sending us some documents.
That's weird that they would do that, and very unusual.
Yes, and well, this was again 1994, and I think they weren't as cautious then as they are now, but they did, and so as a result, I said, at that point, I thought that I was the one that was at Echo Flight when these things went down, but as it turns out, I was not at Echo Flight. I was at Oscar Flight, which happened about a week later. I had never heard of Echo Flight while at Malmstrom Air Force Base. I had never heard about that incident, other than
that. Gosh. So it happened again.
What's that?
So it happened, several times?
Well, like I said, Echo Flight went down March 16th, 1967.
And you were the 24th, right?
Oscar went down about the 24th, yeah.
Now, you remember the Condon Committee?
Absolutely.
They were basically channeled to come up with a report of, they came up after Blue Book, and I'm convinced it was their job to debunk everything. There is a connection to this story with that Condon Committee. Tell me what it is.
Absolutely. The connection is that Dr. Roy Craig was an investigator for the Condon Committee. I think he was one of their principal field investigators that went out and talked to people at different Air Force bases to see if there's something they should look into. And he heard about the Echo Flight shutdown from Ray Fowler. Ray Fowler had been working for Sylvania, and which was a prime contractor for the Minuteman, and he had told Craig, Dr. Roy Craig, about the Echo incident. So Craig comes out to Montana. I think it was in October of 1967, and the investigation was still ongoing as to why Echo went down, but Craig was told by Colonel Chase, who was a base operations officer, I think at the time at Malmstrom, that no, there were no UFOs involved. Now, that was an outright lie, of course, because Chase knew very well that UFOs had been reported.
Mm-hmm. Regardless of what they were. But they were definitely unidentified.
Absolutely. And so Craig basically took his word for it, did not interview any of the individuals involved, and he had names to interview because he got those names from Fowler. And he didn't interview anybody. And this is all documented by Craig's notes, which we've got copies of, and and also by his book. Dr. Craig wrote a book about his involvement with the Conning Committee. But basically, he turns around and goes home and does nothing about it. Supposedly, Robert Lowe, who was the deputy to Conant, was going to check in on the investigation later on, because it was a classified investigation that was going on. And Robert Lowe was the only member of the Conant Committee that had access to classified documents during the investigation. So, but Lowe dropped the ball. And again, this is documented. Actually, Dr. James McDonald, I don't know if you know that name, but Dr. McDonald kept pressing Lowe, and then we've got...
Was it James?
Dr. James McDonald. Yeah. He kept pressing Lowe to get this investigative report, and Lowe just dropped the ball. He just did not pursue it. So basically, there was a collusion there between the Air Force and the Condon Committee
to quash this thing, right?
To whitewash this thing. Yeah. So, and if anybody wants to read more about that, I've written up a summary of what I just said, in more detail on UFO Chronicles. If they want to go to that website, the UFO Chronicles, they can read more about this.
Why do you think there was this collusion or this apparent cover-up? Why were they trying to cover this up?
I think the Air Force just wanted to get out of the business of having to investigate UFOs and report back to the public. You remember the Conning Committee was initiated in 1966 as a result of the Michigan sighting.
Right. The ones that Hynek called swamp gas.
Right.
And it haunted him for the rest of his life.
Right. So there was an outcry, really, because there were a lot of witnesses to those sightings, and they got on Congressman Gerald Ford. You remember that name?
I remember him, and he also he was on the Kennedy Committee before that, wasn't he?
Right. And so they got on his case, and so Gerald Ford called for an investigation of the whole subject of UFOs, and that's how the Conning Committee came into being. The Air Force said, "Okay, we will award a $500,000 contract to the University of Colorado to investigate this." But we've uncovered records where the Air Force and the Conning Committee had meetings with these base UFO officers, so-called base UFO officers, to discuss how they were going to work together and basically how they were going to whitewash the whole thing.
Tragic. Well, no doubt, this was the Condon Report. The plan was to end public knowledge of UFOs. And it was a sneaky way for the Air Force to get out of it, which I don't think they ever did.
No, because obviously more sightings and more witnesses came forward. And so right now I think the Air Force and the government as a whole is on the defensive on this issue because there have been so many credible sightings and so many reports, and I think they're just hunkering down and hoping it'll go away, but it's not going to go away.
How many guys total, soldiers total, were involved in your episode?
Well, in my particular episode, we had our two guards and the main guard,